Let's get started with Python. We can enter code into the cells and then run them to observe the output. If I enter a regular English sentence, such as "AI made a masterpiece," and I press play, I get an error. This is what is called a syntax error. This means we did not obey the rules of the language. Computer languages have rules just like regular languages do. The rules for computer languages tend to be stricter than the rules for regular, spoken languages. We really can't expect the computer to figure out what we meant. Sometimes it can surprise us in its understanding, and some say programming will be useless soon as we will just be able to tell an AI to write a program. Perhaps that is true, but for the time being, we are learning to code, so we must obey the syntax rules for Python. Let's try writing "painting is beautiful" and run that. In this case, we get a different error. In this case, the error message says "painting is not defined." So in this case, we appear to have obeyed the rules of the language, but the interpreter, which is the program that translates our code into instructions the computer can understand, doesn't know what painting is. Colab adds red squiggly line under the items it does not understand. Notice that the word is highlighted in blue, which means it is an important part of Python. Different environments will color code things differently, and just because something isn't colored doesn't mean it isn't part of the language. The colors are there to help us, and you will get used to them and understand them better. Don't get overly concerned with that for now. How about 5 is 5? If we look at the output, we see that it says true. In fact, 5 is 5 is a true statement, and the interpreter has gone one step further and suggested that we do this a different way. This is an example where it was able to understand what we meant even though we didn't exactly express it in the best possible way. It would have been better for us to use the equal sign. Much more on this later. The point is, the interpreter must understand the syntax, and it must know the names of the objects we are referring to. It knows the number 5, what a relief. When we start Colab or any other programming environment, there is a set of names that Python understands at the beginning of a session. This is the namespace. I think of these names as the objects in an artist's studio. These objects can be divided into two broad categories: tools, for example, brushes, rulers, masks, etc., and storage such as drawers, boxes, paint tubes, etc. This doesn't mean we are stuck having to make our art with just these tools and storage. We can borrow objects from other studios, or we can even make our own tools and storage. I think making your own tools is the most enjoyable part of programming, and we will get to that soon. So let's type credits, press play, and see what that does. No error. So credits is part of the Python namespace. The window below displays the value of credits, which is an English sentence. Shout out to all of those groups. So credits is the name of a store of value that holds some text related to people who've helped Python develop. Normally in Python, if we want to see the value stored in a certain object, we have to print that object's value. Colab does this courtesy for us, but it can be annoying. To suppress this, we can add a semicolon at the end. But more importantly, if we have two things, say credits and copyright, we now see that only the last thing prints, in this case copyright. Because of this, it is best that we not rely on this feature of Colab and simply print the things that we want. This brings us to our first tool in our namespace, the function print. From now on, I will refer to tools simply as functions and to storage as variables. For us to be able to use these functions and variables, they must have names which are in the namespace. So let's print copyright and print credits. Now we can see both. A function is just a command. In math class, it has a more technical definition, but in programming, for now at least, we can just think of them as commands. When we give commands, we often need to give additional information. This additional information is placed in parentheses after the function's name. So when we say print, we need to tell it what to print. We refer to this additional information as parameters. If we don't have any parameters to provide the function but want to issue the command, we still need the parenthesis, but we don't put anything in them. So if you see empty parenthesis and you are wondering what that is, it just means that the function to the left of the parenthesis is running with no parameters. If we omit the parenthesis, the function will not run. In print's case, running the function without any instructions simply prints an empty line. Let's do that. You can now see that there is a blank line separating the credits from the copyright. If we omit the parenthesis, that line disappears. Why would we ever want to omit the parenthesis? We do that if we want to do things to the tool instead of using it. It's like the difference between using a hammer and saying, "Pass me the hammer please," or "Put the hammer down." You may be asking yourself, how did I know that credits and copyright are part of the Python namespace? Well, there is also another very handy function called dir, which stands for directory. If we print the directory for the variable __ built-ins __, we get a list of all the names Python knows. The two underscores on each side of the word built-ins are a Python convention that signifies a private variable. It just means use with caution and change at your own peril. But if we were to mess up, we can just start the runtime again like so. No big deal. Back to coding. Let's do that in different cell. We will add a code cell and run only that one. Check and see that print, copyright, and credit are all there, in addition to many others. It is a little hard to read because you have to scroll, so in this case, we can get rid of print for more readability. We talked about how we can bring tools from other studios. That is called importing other modules. We will get to that later, but for now, let me just show you something really fun so you can get to know the philosophy of Python. Let's import this. We get the Zen of Python, which lays out Guido's vision. Are you starting to see why Python is such a beloved language? Meditate on this, and I will see you soon.